Week 13 of the fantasy football season, and he has tight end start sits every matchup. This week, Seattle Seahawks at the Dallas Cowboys Thursday Night Football. So Noah Fant, he really hasn't done much this season for the Seattle Seahawks offense. And this week, I don't expect him to do much versus one of the best defenses in the league in the Dallas Cowboys. Tight ends the last few weeks really haven't emerged what done anything versus defense. And how could you really trust Fant this week, where this season, like I said, his numbers haven't been there. He's a sit. Jake Ferguson a start for me in this Cowboy team. He's the number 2 target most weeks in this offense, even though the last few weeks Brandon Cooks is starting to finally get things going, and him and Dak Prescott are building a rapport and hitting on big plays. But Jake Ferguson knows how to work the middle of the field. Prescott's always like the tight end in his offense. Obviously, Jason Witten going back in his first few seasons, Dalton Schultz, and now Jake Ferguson's had a solid season. So this week here in a matchup versus Seahawks, he's a start. Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. Pretty much no production this Colt team gets from the tight end position. Kylan Granson, Andrew Ogletree, they'll find the end zone occasionally, but besides that, they're really not tight ends that are putting up numbers or really fantasy options. It's Chig Okongwu. He's starting to get things going a little bit in this offense over the last few weeks. The targets have gone up and the fantasy points have gone up, but still it's not at the point where he's really a tight end that you're going to put in your starting lineup each and every week. And tight end, believe it or not, over the last few weeks, guys have emerged and they've been playing good football. Where Chig Okongwu coming into the season, he was a tight end within that top 12-15 range, but obviously it hasn't been like that this year. And this week he's a sit. Atlanta Falcons at the New York Jets. Kyle Pitts, it's been an up and down season, and pretty much this whole offense over there in Atlanta, it's been hit or miss. And Desmond Ritter's back at quarterback, and last week Kyle Pitts really didn't do anything. 4.20 fantasy points in PPR leagues. So he's a borderline option. Tough matchup versus one of the better defenses in the league in the New York Jets. And Kyle Pitts, he's played better at home than he has on the road. Jonnu Smith, a sit for me as well. Tough matchup versus the Jets, and last week he had a goose egg. So right now, I could see Jonnu Smith possibly having a decent game, but he's hard to trust. This week, obviously, after scoring no points and a tougher matchup, Tyler Conklin, borderline option. Conklin, I know he's been the second target all season in this offense, where the Jets really haven't gotten anything out of Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb. Obviously, those guys haven't stepped up and made plays, and it's been Tyler Conklin in the middle of the field, and a lot of garbage time points. We've seen him score as well over the last few weeks. So Tim Boyle, obviously a younger quarterback and inexperienced quarterback in the league, is going to rely on his tight end as a second option in the passing game behind Garrett Wilson. And this week he's a borderline option. Detroit Lions at the New Orleans Saints. Sam Laporta, obviously he's a start each and every week, and with a few teams on bye and the Mark Andrews injury over the last couple weeks, Sam Laporta has bumped up the ranks. He's one of the better tight ends already in the league, and obviously it's just his rookie season. So this week here in a matchup at New Orleans in a potential mini shootout, Sam Laporta once again is a starter, most likely a tight end that's my top 5 in the rankings. Taysom Hill a start as well. I know Taysom Hill the last few weeks the numbers have dropped off after we saw some big ball games from him, but he's a gadget guy. They use him all over the field, obviously running the football, passing the football, even receiving and catching the football a little bit. And this week here versus the Lion defense that we saw last week, they had trouble making stops in that ball game. I think Taysom Hill once again could carve out a decent game as a start. Denver Broncos at the Houston Texans. Adam Trautman did find the end zone last week for this Denver Bronco team, and that was one of the better games of his NFL career. But this week I don't trust him once again to go in there and do it. He's Trautman. I know he had a good game with the touchdown like I mentioned, but Russell Wilson, it's pretty much targeting the running backs out of the backfield, and Courtland Sutton's the majority of this offense, and him running when he has the opportunity. So this week in a tougher matchup, this week going on the road at Houston, he's a sit. Dalton Schultz to start. I know Dalton Schultz last week, he came up empty, not doing much in that game with only 1.20 fantasy points. It was a down game for Dalton Schultz. I think this Houston Texan team, they'll get back on track after a tough loss versus the division rival, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this is going to be a good game. Denver Broncos are playing good football, no doubt about it. But Dalton Schultz, he's been a mainstay of this offense since week 4. After he got off to a slow start early in the season, the last few months, Schultz has gone out there and played good football. So after coming off a bust game, I expect him to go into this one, play well, and it's a good matchup versus Denver that gives up the most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. Los Angeles Chargers at the New England Patriots. Gerald Everett found the end zone for this Los Angeles Charger team, and they need another guy to step up in the passing game because it's pretty much been Keenan Allen and no one else and Eckler obviously catching some passes out of the backfield. So Everett found the end zone versus the Ravens in the Week 12 loss. This week here, good matchup at the New England Patriots, even though I think their defense is still pretty decent. But Everett, he hasn't been a consistent playmaker and fantasy point maker. So this week he's borderline Hunter Henry a sit for me. Another goose egg last week. And pretty much this Patriot team, there's no one I would trust in my starting lineup besides Ramondre Stevenson and maybe Demario Douglas in deeper leagues or more position played leagues. So this week, Hunter Henry versus former team. I still don't have him as a start. Arizona Cardinals at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Trey McBride, he's a start for me in this one. He's one of the better tight ends in the league already here. And ever since Zach Ertz went on injured reserve, Trey McBride's taken this opportunity, and he's playing great football. So even in a tougher matchup, McBride, like I said, he's a top 7-8 tight end and worse weekly, and he's a start. Pat Freiermuth the start for me as well. Last week going over 100 yards and one of the better games of Freiermuth's career. So Freiermuth, he's been back 2 weeks now, one bad game and one great game. And this week here versus a leaky Arizona Cardinal defense where you could go out there, make some plays. And we saw Tyler Higbee last week score 2 touchdowns versus defense. Freiermuth definitely a start. Miami Dolphins at the Commanders, Durham Smythe. Really haven't seen much from him this season here. With its Dolphin team, it's pretty much Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and the running backs out of the backfield, getting the majority of the catches and making plays. He's a sit. Logan Thomas a start. I know Thomas last week didn't do anything versus the Dallas Cowboys in that one, but that game just got out of hand early and often. And this week, this could be the same game script, obviously, with the Dolphins, one of the better offenses in the league, if not the best. Way it could get out of hand, but they're going to have to pass a whole lot. Logan Thomas, a big target in the middle of the field. And this Dolphin defense isn't better than the Cowboys, in my opinion. So I think points could be had by Thomas. And after coming off a bad game, I still have confidence putting him in the lineup as a start. Carolina Panthers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Hayden Hurst, we really haven't seen much out of him this season. I know he's had a couple pop games early on, but he's not really a tight end you could trust. He's a sit. Tommy Tremble, he's pretty much been a tight end that's either touchdown or nothing. And once again this week here, you can't trust anyone in this Panther offense. Maybe Adam Thielen and Chuba Hubbard, but even Adam Thielen last week only had 1 fantasy point in that game. So anyway, Hayden Hurst a sit and Tremble. K-Dot in the start. K-Dot, believe it or not, he's had 8 or more fantasy points in PPR leagues 7 times this season. So K-Dot a big target. Right now, he's playing better football than Chris Godwin in terms of putting up fantasy points and being consistent. So right now, with a few tight ends on bye and a few injuries, obviously, at the position, Cade Otton gets a start. San Francisco 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles. George Kittle, last week I know wasn't a great game for him, but that was the Christian McCaffrey show over there for the San Francisco 49ers in that game with Seattle. And this week here, it's a revenge game for San Francisco. Last season, losing in the NFC Championship where Brock Purdy and this team went down. And George Kittle, he's been a favorite target of Purdy over the last month of the season. After Kittle got off to the slow start, so this week here in a matchup in a potential shootout at this Philadelphia Eagle team, he's a start each and every week. Dallas Goedert, possibility he could return in this game. And Philly's definitely missing him in the middle of the field. Jack Stoll really hasn't done much. And A.J. Brown, the last 2 weeks while Goddard's been out, his numbers have gone down. And I think it definitely has something to do with it because we know Goddard's a threat in the middle of the field. And he opens everything up as well for everyone else. Clog in the middle of the field and having the outsides, getting that one-on-one coverage. So this week, if Goddard does return from the forearm injury, he's a starter. And if he don't return, Jack Stoll, obviously the tight end, but he really hasn't done much in the 2 games we've seen him as a starter. So he's a sit. In this one, Cleveland Browns at the Los Angeles Rams. David Njoku, 3 weeks in a row now, double-digit fantasy points. And it looks like he's put that fire pit accident behind him, which is a great thing, obviously, where he could have went blinded and obviously lost his career is Njoku. So right now, I know it's going to be possibly P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, or Joe Flacco, depending Robinson's injury and depending if they want to go back to Walker or not. But anyway, David Njoku, whoever's going to be the starting quarterback, that tight end position is a security blanket for quarterbacks. If they don't know the system or if they just don't want to stretch the ball down the field, tight ends, they do get a lot underneath routes, obviously, and safe routes in the middle of the field. Tyler Higbee is it. I know Higbee last week, 2 touchdowns. Best game of the season for him, no doubt about it. But this week in a tougher matchup versus a good defense. And Higbee virtually doing nothing all season besides last week's game, which obviously was a little fluky. And this one, he's a sick. Kansas City Chiefs, Green Bay Packers, Travis Kelce, he's a start each and every week. I know Kelce's not putting up those monster numbers and those huge 30, 40-point ball games like we've seen over the last few seasons. But anyway, still the best tight end in pro football and fantasy football is Travis Kelce. I know TJ Hawkinson is right there neck and neck with him, but once again, in this offense and with Patrick Mahomes, he's a tight end that's up there each and every week. In his start this week at Green Bay, Tucker Kraft, he did find the end zone last week, filling in for Luke Musgrave out 3 more games, obviously with the abdominal injury. This week was a little fluky for Tucker Kraft, and this week in a tough matchup versus one of the better defenses in the league. He's a sit-in on the final game of the week, Monday Night Football, Cincinnati Bengals at the Jacksonville Jaguars. So this Bengal team, they've had a tight end by committee this season. Irv Smith Jr., Drew Sample, Tanner Hudson, and Drew Sample, I know last week he did find the end zone in that game, but he only had 1 catch, 11 yards, and a touchdown. So he's a tight end I'm not really going to trust. I know Jake Browning's in there. They're going to go more 2 tight end sets and stuff like that is this Cincinnati Bengal team. But this offense really couldn't move the ball and do things. So both tight ends are sits for me. And now to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know Evan Ingram, the numbers have dropped off the last month of the season. But last week, Evan Ingram, he went out there and he got back a little bit with a decent ball game with 5 catches, 49 yards. So this week here, Monday Night Football, extra day rest for this Jacksonville Jaguar team versus in the middle of the pack opponent. And it's a big game for Jacksonville to be prime time. And they're a team that's played great football, obviously, winning Jacksonville's 7 out of 8 ball games. So right now, Evan Ingram, even though the numbers have dropped off the last month, I think he can have a good game this week, and he's a start. So that's tight end start sits every matchup, week 13 of the fantasy football season.